Again, this person was in court. We can get some actual information about what happened in court, and then we'll slide right over there to the update about what happened, which is here, okay? I think we're probably going to see, they're going to call the first witness as we're going to see here, but we're going to go get to that in a second. Let me go here.
As alleged victim number one, but the government came out and just automatically just named her. They talked about the incident where Diddy found out Cassie was seeing another man, and that Diddy took his gun and his bodyguard, and Diddy threatened to allegedly kill this man that Cassie was with.
Kushagar, thank you for watching. You say you're watching from India with love. Send my love to you as well.
Emily Johnson talked about how he had beat Cassie so brutally that he also had to take control of her. He kept videos of Cassie sleeping with escorts and threatened to use them against her. These are the types of things we had already known and were already kind of painted out inside those indictments that the government had written up and that type of sort. Diddy referring himself as a king, which is kind of ironic because he has a giant king crown on the back of his neck. Emily Johnson spoke about the defendant using his inner circle to manipulate women that for a while.
Now, I don't think they could bring up the fact of Diddy's tattoos. That was a big thing about Tory Lanez. Like Tory Lanez has an AK-47 tattooed right here. And you ever seen Tory? Look, pause. Tory Lanez shirtless. And this is a tattoo right here. What was said is that if Tory took the stand, it could be brought into to court. But if he didn't take the stand, they couldn't bring up this in the trial, and it never brought it up. But if he did take the stand, they could have asked him about it. And obviously he didn't take the stand. But, it just goes to show, like, if someone has a certain tattoo, apparently we're now realizing that these freak-offs were called Wild King Nights. So they're also kind of throwing out this thing to say Diddy has this king mentality, like he's this king of everybody. He also has a tattoo or some type of thing on the back of his neck that kind of, doubles down on that type of theory. I don't believe that they're going to be allowed to use that as something to help make their case. Okay? By the way, there's still a question. Will Diddy take the stand? There's a lot of questions about that. We got to consider that in the sense of if Diddy doesn't take the stand to explain some of these things that could be like, okay, either way, there's going to be a mountain of not only evidence, but a mountain narrative that Diddy is this freak or creep. And I think there's a possibility that Diddy has to take the stand to just explain himself and say, hey, yeah, I'm not going to lie, I'm a wild boy. Yeah, I'm a freaky ass nigga. But I'm a freaky ass consensual sex ass nigga. And I helped all these people out and they all try to get their money up off me, and then they came with allegations. So we're going to see if he takes a stand. Let's keep listening to this.
While he watched how his bodyguards kind of played,
Jill, thank you for the gifted memberships,
as well as employees kind of played a role into this alleged RICO conspiracy as well too. And she made it a point to say this case is not about a celebrity's private sex preferences, because that was something that the defense definitely kind of chalked it up to being just that he lived an alternative lifestyle, that type of sort, and we'll talk about that more in a second. While there has been a lot of reports about victim 3 and where her whereabouts are or anything like that, the defense didn't talk about alleged victim number 3. Instead, they kept it pretty short and to the point. They talked about Cassie. They talked about Jane, who we presume to be the other alleged victim. In this case, the government was talking about, the freak-offs being also named Wild King Night, something that we had also known about, as well as even just simply as, hotel nights as well, too. Allegations of flying escorts across state lines, out of the country, into the country, that type of thing, that Diddy had demands for the staff to set up his rooms in advance, lighting, lube, cash for escorts, drugs for both Diddy and the women that were participating in these types of events. Women had to dress in lingerie, had to wear white nails, tall heels, something that Cassie had pointed out in her civil lawsuit that was later settled. Talking about the drug use. Then they went into kind of, the allegations specifically geared towards Cassie and just how, the defendant had met Cassie. They were They had a 17-year age difference. Cassie was initially given a 10-album deal, and obviously that never happened as far as putting out a whole bunch of different albums and that type of sort. And so these were types of things that we had already known about. I think some of the more interesting points also go to Jane, as far as the other alleged victim. She was a single mom. She met Diddy around 2020 when Diddy was single, when Jane was single, but Diddy was seeing other people. Diddy introduced Jane to the freak-offs, and she had tried one just to
We want to figure out who Jane is. I'm trying to do some research here to figure out who Jane Doe is.
kind of make him happy, and then just kind of kept going into this repetitive cycle of doing these freak-offs, wild hotel nights, that type of sort, just to kind of appease him, that Jane didn't want to do these freak-offs, and that she had tried at even one point to hire men on her own that worked in the porn industry so she could pick the men. Diddy made her, these escorts not wear condoms when they, allegedly participated in these types of activities. So these were just kind of the big things that were pointed out as far as the government. And Jesse, do you want...
By the way, I'm getting some information here. Jane is definitely not Young Miami. From information I'm getting from people who have some knowledge about their relationship, they said Diddy and Young Miami met in 2021 at her former manager's birthday party. So this idea that they've known each other for 5 years is not correct. That would be about like 4 or 3 years before. And before then, Young Miami was with Southside. So supposedly it's not Young Miami. Supposedly.
Want me to go into the defense, because the defense was pretty interesting as well too.
Before you go into the defense, as I was reading about the reporting today, it was the first confirmation that Cassandra Ventura is victim one in this case. We always guessed it. We always surmised it. Now we have a definitive answer. And by the way, I think it was either the prosecution or the defense who mentioned that she's going to probably testify this week, as we wonder who the first witnesses are going to be. And also this reference to Mia, who is Sean Combs' personal assistant, that is maybe going to provide some important testimony in this case. Now, before we go to the defense, real quick, as though you're looking at all these people that are behind you right now, Elizabeth, are these all reporters? Are these all fans? Are these all people who are supporting Sean Combs, who are not supporting Sean Combs? Are these just interested spectators? I'm trying to get a sense of the people that are walking behind you right now.
It's madness out there.
Yeah, so obviously I was trying not to pay attention so much because it's really so many people, but it's really just kind of a common mix. It's a lot of people who are here with the media. You have field producers, you have social media producers, and pretty much every outlet across the country is here right now inside that courtroom. I wouldn't say there's too many supporters beyond that one guy just kind of yelling, and he had been kind of saying some pretty vile things to us as reporters. So, we're trying too much not to pay attention to him as much as possible. As far as the family goes, right before we did this hit, we saw the family kind of get into a Sprinter van and kind of drive off, maybe to get something to eat, maybe to decompress, because, think about it, Jesse, his children were inside that courtroom, especially his daughters were inside that courtroom hearing about their father,
Damn, I wonder if they ever knew that this nigga was a fucking freak.
Escorts and allegedly beating women and that type of sort. So maybe it was just the time that all the family members just had to get out of here, get away from this media circus. But for the most part, it's a good mix of both media and just the general public who are just genuinely curious.
So Elizabeth, I know you have to jump back into that courtroom because they're going to start up in about 15 minutes. Real quick, if you could summarize the defense's opening statement, some highlights there.
Yeah, the defense's opening statements were pretty, we were kind of expecting them. They were going to have to admit that Diddy had been physically violent towards women in the past. They were going to have to admit that Diddy had this type of temper, that, he participated in taking these types of drugs, and that his temper was especially bad whenever he was on drugs and alcohol. There was a point in the openings where Diddy stood up when Tenny Garagos was introducing him to the jury. For the most part, even throughout.
By the way, real quick, if you're watching on the King Akademiks channel, man, hit that like button, man. We got 15,000 people over there, 1,000 likes. That's disgraceful. Come on, chat. That's disgraceful. We should at least have 6,000 or 7,000 likes. Stop lying.
opening statements, he kind of sat there calmly. He looked at the jurors. He looked at Tinny Garagos, who again provided the opening statements on the defense's behalf. The defense was kind of harping on the fact that the government has no place in his bedroom, something that we had talked about many of times, just how they're kind of painting this as somebody, who did bad things on one hand, but were these bad things criminal? And that was essentially what the defense's argument was there. They said that the defense will see domestic violence in this trial, but while they do take it seriously, they say it's not sex trafficking. So I feel like they're trying to divide this line between this being a domestic violence spat or domestic violence toxic relationship type of thing, as opposed to these being actual criminal acts that Diddy was allegedly committing and that type of thing. The defense was saying that these alleged victims were strong, capable women, that they made choices that were for adults, they were free of choice, and they came with both pros and cons, and that type of thing. And then they were kind of talking a lot about how Diddy was jealous and how, other partners or his other relationship partner. So, for example, Cassie. They also mentioned Gina, somebody I had talked about in some stories I had done. She had talked about how Diddy was physically violent with her in a podcast.
Oh, so Gina isn't witness too then, or maybe she is. Maybe she is, but I don't know if the defense before Jane takes the stand, if they could say her name. I would think not, because I don't know.
Podcast episode, for example, and so that was kind of her mention there beyond what the government was talking about as far as alleged victims in this case and that type of sort. They had mentioned Kim Porter and how Cassie was jealous of Kim Porter's relationship with Diddy and that type of thing. And then everything kind of ended as soon as Kim Porter had passed away. Cassie went to her memorial service, and that was the last time she had seen Diddy, even prior to her expectation that she'll be inside that courtroom testifying. These jurors are going to see some of these freak-off videos, but they say that it was taken from Cassie's devices, not Diddy's devices. And so, they talked about Mia, for example, who had worked with Diddy for a number of years, and the defense says, they want jurors to evaluate her motive to testify. When they were talking about Jane Doe, it was the same thing, that this was a jealous relationship. Jane wanted to be more public, whereas Diddy, he flaunted other relationships that weren't with Jane and that type of thing. So those were some of the biggest takeaways from the defense's openings, as well as the government's openings as well, too.
These are the arguments we anticipated. Now, obviously, there's a lot more detail to it. We're hearing it in an official capacity. And these jurors, while they might have heard certain aspects of this case, this is the first time, presumably, both arguments are being positioned to them for the first time in such a very particular way. And this is opening statements. It's not evidence, but it is the start, the official start of Sean Combs' criminal trial. Elizabeth Milner, thank you so much for reporting. Go back into that courthouse. Stay safe out there. There's a lot of interesting characters you're seeing running around. But thanks, Elizabeth.
Okay, cool. So we're back. We are back, people. We are back, and I hope you guys are. Hope y'all got y'all lunch if it's lunchtime for y'all, or hopefully you're getting your work done, or if you're driving across the country, or however you're consuming this content. Hopefully you guys are getting your day going on. Order some food, kick back. We still got about like 3 more hours before we're out of court, right? Okay, so cool. So they're back in, and they're back in at 122, and everybody's almost back in, and the judge says, in terms of objections, the defense says, hey, we're still waiting for the defendant. So they're so sorry. So Diddy wasn't in court. They bring him in court. They said one exhibit is objected to. That's what the judge is now saying. It says, subject to the U.S. laying the proper foundation, it is admissible. Okay. So remember, there was something that was an addendum to something that was already an exhibit. Diddy's team, Brian Steele, said, nah, get that shit out of here. Like, what the hell? Y'all bringing in last minute shit? The judge says, listen, as long as there's proper foundation in introducing this material, I'm going to make it admissible. Now, remember, they raised an objection anyway, so later they could talk about it in possible appellate court. The judge says the exhibit with the added note. It says the objection is well taken. It is excluded. So it looked like, oh, never mind, the exhibit with the notes. So they allow one with foundation, proper foundation from how the government's going to exclude it, present it. And then the second exhibit, remember there was 2, the judge excludes. So Brian Steele, that's a dub. That's one win right there. So one exhibit cannot be used. That's based off Brian Steele raising that objection. So salute to Brian Steele. Judge says, all rise. The juries enter. Says, is the government ready to call the first witness? AUSA says, first, we have 4 exhibits. The Agnifilio says, we got no problem. Go ahead. So we call LAPD Officer Israel Flores. Flores is now an LAPD officer who says, I'm a reservist for the Army, and I was a guard with Securitas in 2016 in the Intercontinental Hotel near Century City. The AUSA says, what happened on March 5th, 2016? Flores says, I was told of the 6th floor. Flores says, there, I recognize Sean Combs. He's there wearing a gray sweater. AUSA says, what's your title? He says, well, I was the Assistant Director of Security. AUSA then says, well, let me show you a photo of the Intercontinental Hotel. Flores says, yeah, I know it. It's shaped like a pyramid. The judge admits the exhibit. So the picture that they showed, that's called and put on the record as Exhibit 1 or A or whatever the case is, whatever the sequencing is. And then they continue. It says, hey, what kind of incidents do you normally respond to? The dude says, yo, all kinds. We have a couple of suicides there. We prepare incident reports, the 5 W's, okay? AUSA says, would you attach photographs to the reports? Flores says, yes, but not video. We never had the password. AUSA says, when did this incident take place? He says, 11 a.m. I got a report of a woman in distress on the 6th floor. I closed the security base and checked the cameras. There was an African-American man pacing back and forth. I did not see the female. I rushed there. AUSA says, what do you see on the 6th floor? I said, well, Mr. Combs is in a towel and some type of colored socks. He's a rapper and producer. And I saw Cassie, who was on the floor. AUSA says, let me show you some photos. Combs is now in a tuxedo. And in a separate photo, Cassie is smiling. AUSA says, what did you tell them? Flores says they were arguing. They'd have to take it back to they were arguing they'd have to take it back to their room, and that there was a broken vase that, so they were arguing, and the security said, y'all got to take that back to your room. Like, y'all doing too much outside of the room. And says, and there's a broken vase. We're going to charge it to your room. And Cassie says she wanted her phone and her bag. Cassie says she wanted to leave. Combs says, you're not leaving. I saw inside the room a black male wearing dark clothing. AUSA says, well, what did Combs do after Cassie left? Flores says, well, he called for me. He was holding a stack of money, and he says not to tell anyone. What did you say? I said, I don't want your money. The damage is going to be charged to the room. AUSA says, where did Cassie go? So after I spoke with her, she left. The car pulled up. She left in a black SUV. So was there a driver? He says 7 feet. I don't know why he says 7 feet. Flores says she wants to leave. I said, I'm talking to her, not you. They left. So it looked like he was checking Diddy to say, yo, this woman wants to leave, and it's not your choice if she could leave or not. AUSA says, then what? It says, well, we went up to Mr. Combs' room to remind him of hotel rules. He opens the door and grabs the phone and says, are you recording me? I pinned him to the wall. So they yanked Diddy up and said, what the fuck, nigga? I pinned him to the wall. I took photos of the broken vase and told him to come clean it up. I went to write up the incident report. He said, is this it? He said, yeah, that's my report with my name on it. The defense says, same objection. By the way, the objection is because the report has additional notes that wasn't known before, and they want to object that we don't want that report in the case. The judge did overrule it as long as there was foundation, and I guess it's foundation. The judge says noted. AUSA says, did you review the video? Flores says yes. AUSA says, I'm handing you a thumb drive with videos. Said, did it have audio? Flores says no. Said, let's walk through it. Who is this? So he's watching the video now. He says, Cassie. And who is this? Said, Mr. Combs. So what's happening here? So, well, she picked up, I guess, not wall phone, the cell phone. So what did you find when you got there? The broken vase. What's at the end of this video? Me coming out the elevator. Let's pull up the incident report again. He said, here we reminded him the checkout time was approaching. He says, what did you add to the incident report after you reviewed the video? What I described in the video. AUSA says, what did you do else with the video? It says, I recorded 2 videos of it with my iPhone to show my wife at home. Ooh. So this guy looked like he recorded videos of that with his iPhone to show his wife. Wow. Interesting. All right, I think we're caught up. Let me do a little refresh. But we might be caught up here. Keep in mind, homie's tweeting in court. It's impossible for him to be all the way, that quick. And also there's time elapse, and they're passing thumb drives, they're loading up videos, they're, hey, look at this picture. They're doing other things in court. So we're not going to get minute by minute update, but they're definitely in court. And when any updates come out, we will be reporting that. Okay, give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. So the latest update will be, here we go. So this is after they were take a break. Then we get to here. Then we get to there. 35 minutes ago, 25. Okay. And yeah, so the latest update is 5 minutes ago. He says he recorded 2 videos with his iPhone to show his wife. So that might be one of the reasons why that video is now out. Okay. All right. Chat, I am getting an update. I am getting a slight update. The slight update is according to Tory's team. Tory's team is saying that Tory is in critical condition. I don't know what that currently means, because that kind of would go against that report that it's life-threatening, but critical could still mean not life-threatening. We're hoping that Tory pulls through, but we have gotten our confirmation that what was told to Shade Room by Tory's team is that he is indeed in critical condition at this time. So I want you guys to keep Tory Lanez in your prayers. And if we do get any more updates of things looking a little bit better, hopefully we could share that with you as soon as it happens. But Tory Lanez currently in critical condition after being stabbed in prison after he was in the yard. If you don't know, Tory Lanez is not in protective custody. He's in general population. He's walking the yard with everybody else. And apparently there was an attempt on his life, it would imagine, right? Tory Lanez was stabbed. Prayers up for Tory. Okay. All right, people, we're kind of waiting on the next update here. I'm trying to see if we see any supplementary information about this case or trial that we could get a realistic understanding of what's going on in court. Who else was there? Clearly the kids are in court. Let's see what's going on here.
I've seen about 1 million headlines and 1 million posts, and not one post can tell you what the big attention-grabbing headline has to do with the case. People should just stop. I mean, like, the new media definitely should stop. The old media never even tried. They never even bothered. It's too expensive to actually, like, do a story. God damn, the game needs me.
Yeah, lawyer for workers. He was doing day-to-day, updates on Tory. I don't think he's doing it for Diddy. I think my man done got his bag. Ever since that trial, that nigga clouded up. He got more clients than a motherfucker these days, so he don't really got time to be doing all this type of stuff as much. But anyway, let's just we're going to peruse around the internet until we get another update. Again, we're waiting for the following update to this. I'll see is there another update? We're waiting. We are waiting. Yeah. Yep, we're still waiting. Okay. Anything else? I'm wondering if there's anybody else that's streaming outside of the courtroom. Outside of the courtroom. Like maybe outside the court. Just chilling. Let's see. Let's look up Diddy trial. Somebody got to be live streaming. We just want to get like what the atmosphere is like. What's going on? Let's see. Filter. Let's go to live video. Law and Crimes is live. We use their stuff for a lot of stuff. Okay, this is outside. Okay, here we go. Okay. So this is outside the courtroom. So these officers are going to make sure that there's just not people standing in the hallway. Also make sure they could create some type of order outside of the courtroom. Clearly increased police presence when we were seeing people enter and exit through this court building, through these same doors. We didn't see this much attention, but we're now seeing it. So it looks like they're making sure all the fuck shit doesn't go too crazy. This was it earlier. So they just got a feed just showing the door. Damn. And people are ranting and raving.
Introduce James.
Going to say finish what with people outside the courtroom. They're gonna put it all up there.
Early on,
For part of the.
right now, 60% of you. Am I totally crazy?
No, Jess. I mean, I think we've been talking about this for many months, which is this a situation where they made a federal case out of perhaps a lot of significant state court misconduct or crimes, but to make it a racketeering case, I always thought could potentially be a bridge too far. And we saw precisely what we expected out of the defense today after a very effective, it sounds like, listening to Elizabeth, prosecution argument. The defense did exactly what we thought, which is to say, hey, listen, bad conduct, at times a bad guy, but we're in the wrong courthouse. They made a federal case out of some appalling domestic violence, which they had to concede, and this were, at its worst, consensual conduct by a lot of adults, no children, a lot of adults, perhaps acting badly, among which he was one. So I think it is going to be very interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the day this jury parses charges and perhaps comes in with a compromise verdict.
We're still in the early stages.
Yeah, I think most people, no one's actually predicting a clean sweep that Diddy's going to get found guilty on all counts. People actually think it's going to be a mixed verdict, where some things are going to be thrown out and some things he might get stuck with. And I think that's going to be really interesting.
And by the way, everybody's asking right now, where's the footage? Like, why there's no cameras in the courtroom? Unfortunately, no. There are no cameras in federal courtrooms. That is the federal law right now. Those are the federal rules. I didn't make them. I think it's a big mistake, but there's always a concern. Yeah, I think that there's a mistake, but there's, concern about it improperly tainting the jury, it improperly tainting the case. I've heard the arguments, but in an effort of transparency, when there's a case of so much public interest, I think there should be cameras. There's going to be no audio. Transcripts will be released, and we're going to do something with those as well here on Law and Crime to try to do our best to put you inside that courthouse. So stay tuned on that. We have a question from Dry Roach 69. So submit your questions on YouTube right now. Will tapes be shown? Yes, they will, at least based upon the prosecution's opening.
I really think it's better.
Prosecutor here. First, we enter 4 exhibits. The defense, no objection.
Okay. All right. So we're kind of in limbo here, and I guess this is time for me to interact with you guys in the chat. So if you guys do have questions, I'll kind of cater to what you guys got going on, and we'll kind of work off of that. But currently, we are waiting for more updates, and it looks like we do have one more. Flores says the video of Flores' video of the video. So remember, he recorded off his cell phone. This is 2016. Has his voiceover, including about how shiny his shoes were, is played for the jury. So the video he took of the video is played. I guess that has audio, but it's a voiceover at this point because he's talking over it. AUSA says, did you work the next day? Flores says, no, I had the next 2 days off. AUSA says, when you came back in, did you look for the video? He says, I did. He says, but it was gone. He said, did you ever see it again? He says, yes, recently. AUSA says, nothing further. Jub Submaranian says cross-examination. So now this is the time for Diddy's team to step up and do it. Brian Steele. Oh, Brian. I don't know why. I'll be looking at Brian Steele like he's Anthony Edwards right now, man. Like that nigga's just cooking. But yeah, Brian Steele looked like he's a surgeon. He's a surgical person. By the way, what he did with YSL Woody and all these other people that were jurors was fucking phenomenal. And it's actually interesting. The lead, Mark Agnafilo, he was very active in pretrial and everything else, picking a jury. That was him. But when it comes to now arguing this case, he didn't do openings. And the first cross-examination of the first witness, Big Brian Steele, is up there. So shout out to Brian Steele, who, by the way, only got like 2 weeks to get ready for this trial. He got hired last minute. He had to get up to speed with it. And he's now doing the heavy lifting because beyond opening statements, this is where you're going to win your case. You got to turn those goddamn witnesses into unreliable or have them basically concede that some of the stuff that they see didn't necessarily constitute as a crime. And Brian Steele, he's now checked into the game. Okay? So cool. Brian Steele says, yo, you said your report was the 5 W's, right? The guy says, yes. Okay. All right. We're going to see what Brian Steele does. What does Brian Steele do? Again, just real quick, we got to go to Brian Steele. His best moments in the YSL case. Okay? Not only was he jamming at halftime, remember how vigorously and aggressively he got at.
Into the 6th and 14th Amendments to the United States.
And by the way, this is why he's known as a bulldog now. He got at this court for an ex parte meeting. He vehemently got at him. He basically then supposedly was held in contempt. He never really went to jail, but he did get supposedly, he was taken into custody supposedly. He put his freedom on the line for Jeffrey Williams, and also he got at this judge so much, he got this judge off the case. He got 2 other judges. Remember, we landed with Whitaker. Whitaker was the judge. But the reason why this black judge got off the case, Brian Steele was not playing. This is a little bit of him.
Corresponding sections of the Georgia Constitution, I'm required to make a full and complete statement to the court. For the record, and if God forbid this goes up on appeal for the appellate courts or another tribunal, commission, or administrative body, I was told, based upon information and belief, that when we arrived at 8:30, 9 o'clock today, we did not come into your courtroom until almost 11:30. And what I found out just recently, this is not waived, is that supposedly in chambers, this honorable court reporter at times, honorable court at times, district attorney or district attorneys from the DA's office, as well as investigators, sheriff deputies, Mr. Copeland and his counsel met together. None of the defense team, to my knowledge, was aware that this was going on. It was told, based upon information belief, that it was told to the district attorneys that Mr. Copeland intended to plead the 5th Amendment. Then I was told, based upon information belief, that...
Let me speed up. They get to an argument. Here we go.
Served 2. And the reason was CC'd to me that never...
Mr. Steele, can I interrupt you for just a second? I'm kind of disturbed because that's ex parte.
So essentially what happened is Brian Steele brings up that he knew some details of what happened in an ex parte meeting. The judge gets mad, be like, how the fuck did you know that? And he's like, yo, tell me who told you. And Brian Steele says, I ain't telling you shit. And they kind of get into a back and forth. Brian Steele stands his ground. Ultimately, a bunch of lawyers showed up to support Brian Steele because he got held in contempt. He never went to jail because an appellate court actually overturned that. But what Brian Steele did just showed his conviction and how hard it goes for a client. He went crazy for Jeffrey Williams. If he could go even nearly as crazy for Diddy, Diddy might have a fighting chance, even though, I mean, again, this is just passion right here. By the way, he's still an amazing attorney, and we do know this is federal court, not that bullshit they got in Georgia called Fulton County Court. This is federal court that he's in, but clearly that passion is something you want for the person defending you.
That was an ex parte conversation. How did you find out about any of that?
Well, I'm not disturbed too. And the reason
I'm asking you a question. How did you find out about it?
I'm going to answer you the question.
Okay.
Scuttle, if you look at SCUDDER versus state, which is 298 Georgia, 438, it's Division 2, 782 Southeast 2D 638, 2016. Our highest court says when a court meets, because Mr. Copeland comes in, meets with the court supposedly made statements, which I assume is somehow accurate based on...
By the way, Robbie Atkins, thank you for the 5. Say, yo, Ak, I'll see you Thursday. I'm going to make a weekend off it and travel up to New York from Virginia. Didn't get the meet and greet, but I'm sure we'll chop it up. Damn. Wait, how much meet and greets do we have? Chat, I might put some more meet and greets if you guys like really want to come kick it with me, bro. But anyway.
You just said we're entitled, Mr. Williams and every other person wrongly charged.
By the way, the whole thing with meet and greets is like, remember, there's a whole show. I got to show up early. We're going to do the meet and greet this and third. I don't want to be there like 5 hours before, and probably I don't want to either, right?
Is entitled under the Georgia Constitution to be present. That's a critical stage.
It's just like when you meet with me, and you and Mr. Adams meet with me, and others have met with me. It's those are ex parte for a lot of different other reasons, but I will certainly note that for purposes of record.
Well, I'm going forward. What I was told was that Mr. Copeland said,
and you haven't answered my question yet.
I'm not going to answer that question.
You're not.
No, I will not answer that
Why
question.
will you not answer that question?
Because I want to make sure that what I say is accurate. I'm not trying to.
No.
anybody else
I'm
to
asking
say
you, how did you get this information?
I'm not telling the court. What I'm saying is based on
Bam.
information.
Okay, well, listen, if you don't tell me how you got this information, then you and I are going to have some problems.
We can have this. I have problems right now.
Okay,
I'd like
I
to-
know.
Yo, we could have them problems, bud.
Look, I don't want to know about your problems, okay, at this point in time. All I'm asking you at this point in time is, how did you come upon this information? Look, if the case gets reviewed, the record's going to be available for our appellate court and for whatever reason.
Anthony
But
R.,
it's
thank you for
disturbing
gifted.
how somehow you have surreptitiously gotten information in regards to the court's private ex parte conversations with a party. I mean,
a party,
yes.
a witness who was sworn in Friday. The court's telling. This is what I was told. If this is not true, not true. This court
Mr. Steele,
handed
ask
Mr.
me.
Copeland.
Tell me how you
perjury.
got the information.
Listen, whatever you want to do.
Tell me how you got the information, then we can go ahead and go forward.
I'm not going to say that. What I'm going
Well-
to say is this. I was told, and I hope this concerns the court.
It
I was
concerns
told-
me that you have proprietary information.
Why is it
or
proprietary?
information that you should not be having that was ex parte.
Why?
With a party.
Why?
State of Georgia.
How about the witness? How about Mr. Copeland, who supposedly announced he's not testifying and he'll sit for 2 years, and then supposedly this honorable court,
okay.
or excuse me, let me rephrase that. This court supposedly said, I can hold you until the end of this trial. Ms. Hilton supposedly said, actually, all of the defendants and then all 26 people are disposed of. If that's true, what this is coercion, witness intimidation, ex parte communications that we have a constitutional right to be present for. So I understand that you're upset towards me, but I don't know what I did.
Mr. Steele,
I'm
I
doing
still
what
want to know,
everybody should
how
do.
did you come upon this information? Who told you?
What I want to know is why wasn't I there? Why,
Sir, I'm going to hold you in contempt if you don't tell me who tell me who this
I
information
don't
was
want to
come
be
from.
held in contempt.
Well,
I'm not
then,
answering that question. That's what
We don't bend, we don't fold, we Brian Steele.
attorney-client privilege information. I am not answering.
Attorney-client privilege, unless you were in my chambers, that's the only way you can figure out.
I am
tell
telling
you what, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. If you don't tell me
Don't
who
have to.
if you don't tell me who it is, I'm going to put you.
Well, let me-
I'm going to put you in contempt
I
because that is not attorney-client privilege.
attorney work product privilege. I am not.
How did you get that information supposedly from my chambers? Did somebody tell you?
I'm not. You should have told me.
You got 5 minutes.
Well, I don't need it. I want to continue.
You got 5 minutes?
This is what I was told. Mr. Copeland made statements that he
That nigga said we're in recess. They had to come in and be like,
admitted to
"All
killing
right, we're
Donovan
done.
Thomas.
We're done. Nah. Yo, and then
Judge, just for the record, is the criminal contempt, is it criminal contempt that you held him in?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you said you had a hearing earlier today.
No, with criminal contempt, I told him what the contempt was, and that was.
by the way, this was Brian Steele's lawyer. so even a lawyer needs a lawyer, to speak on their behalf.
He refused to tell him. Thank you.
Two.
Announce punishment summarily without.
Yes.
He has a Fifth Amendment privilege against answering those questions. Rule 1.6 protects all.
So, by the way, I heard there was a large amount of lawyers that showed up to court to stand in solidarity with Brian Steele because Brian Steele went crazy. And by the way, what ended up happening after this, the judge ordered Brian Steele to fucking to be put in custody.
Grant him a supersedious bond.
As long as he, when he tells me,
applies, which so
Hold on,
he's
I want to show you this other part.
Pursuant to the 6th and
Hold on. Sorry. Hold on. So the 5 minutes passed.
okay, Mr. Steele, would you take the podium, please, sir? Before I recessed, I asked you, how did you get this information? And it is not covered by work product. There's only one way you could have gotten.
I'm keeping my eye on the updates. All right, Chad. We have some time in between updates. We're just giving you the Brian Steele rundown on why this guy is added to Diddy's case and why this is the money guy right now. There's two, like Taco Pina just did some good shit for A$AP Rocky. By the way, that's the reason why I believe Fat Joe just hired him to deal with his sexual assault case. Taco Pina, he went balls to the wall and got not guilty for A$AP Rocky when A$AP Rocky was supposedly heard on audio, and there's a witness that claimed he shot his friend, and his friend was snitching and singing like a Tweety Bird. Taco Pina got that not guilty, but this is the big guy right here. He pretty much got the RICO case. I know it wasn't a not guilty because it was a plea, but he destroyed Fulton County. Like they look like jokes, and Brian Steele was the guy.
So I'm going to ask you again.
I respect that, and it gives me no joy. But as you know, Georgia Rule of Professional Conduct, please check me. Rule 1.6, comment 5 reads, and this is what I have. 1.6.
I know what the rule says, but here's the thing.
Well, let me just-
But In order, you need to please tell me who you got it from. I'm not asking you sum and substance of anything as of yet, okay? But I need you to tell me how you got the information. If you don't tell me how you got the information, I'm going to hold you in contempt.
I understand. I don't want to be held in contempt.
And I don't want to hold you in contempt, but this is so sacrosanct to have a conversation in my chambers parroted to you and others. It is that serious.
Yeah. And that's why I raise it. It is that serious that we should have been there and it shouldn't have happened.
Sir, that's a whole separate issue. And that's why ex parte conversations are recorded.
Why would it be ex parte? You act like it's ex parte under seal.
Ex parte. It's ex parte because that's what the state asked me to do. It's just like when you asked me for an ex parte conversation.
I've never asked this honorable court or any court to meet with me and a witness.
Sir, you're straying off the issue.
I'm not.
The issue is how did you get this information?
I understand the issue. I promise you I understand it. But what I'm trying to ask you is, if you look at Common 5, this is how I understand the law.
You cannot you can't violate something and then use privilege. Okay?
I'm not violating anything.
Okay, but that's why I'm saying, how did you get information?
But just listen to what I'm trying to tell you. You're threatening me with contempt.
Privilege would occur. The privilege in 1.6 would occur if you were in the right place.
They argued for a while, so let me kind of like speed this up a little bit. The judge is gonna get so mad.
Taking confidence by the client.
And because I have an idea how you that's said. When I think about it, 5 o'clock today, we'll see where you are. That's in contempt.
And you're saying it's not some substance, but I'm telling you, I can't
do
that.
Thank you for the gifted, okay?
Under the bar rule.
All right. Well, I'm going to hold you in contempt, and you can think about it. 5 o'clock today, we'll see where you are at that stand on that point. Because no, that's not what I
look. They pulling out.
That's not what I understand the rule to be. I've not asked you something.
They're about to pull out the cuffs.
Substance of what was said. I asked you how you got it.
I can't do that.
Yes, you can, because I have an idea how you got it.
Well, your idea.
I have an idea how you got it, but that's improper, sir.
Your idea may be wrong, and you're asking me to listen. I told you the first time, and I'm not.
Sir, I don't want to hold you in contempt, but this is that serious,
Judge.
You cannot eavesdrop and get information that was not meant for you to hear at that particular point in time.
Judge, listen, and listen. I'll do whatever you want to 5 o'clock or thereafter. But what I'm trying to tell you is, Your Honor, this is so serious to me. We need a hearing, and I'm moving for a mistrial. It is my understanding, based upon information belief,
from whom?
Part of it.
From whom?
Well, I'd like to get the substance first, and then we can.
Okay, well then you'll be in custody until then, because you need to tell me how you got the information. I'm not asking you what was said. You've already kind of given us some snippets of what you said. That tells me that somebody parroted that information to you. So,
but you're assuming something because I told you already.
Well, then, other than if you were, or one of the deputies gave you that information.
Well, Your Honor.
And if that person gave you that information, I'm not going to have I'm not going to have any further conversation with you about this. I want to know, the question still remains. I want to know who gave you the information?
I'd like to know what information happened outside of presence. That's really it.
He can go into custody at this point.
I think that the court needs to again declare a mistrial based upon.
Okay, and I'm going to deny. I'm going to deny the motion.
I'm going to be honest with you. They did steal like the bailiffs, and obviously they know he's pretty much an officer of the court, and he's there a lot. They didn't just put him in cuffs and put his hand behind his back. They kind of escorted him off. We never saw him in cuffs.
Deny your motion.
I understand that you spoke with the witness outside of our presence.
And whenever, yes, I have. Nick,
you could tell if this was a regular person, this bailiff would have definitely just. Turn around, nigga, like it's done. Cut the mic, it's over. Because the judge said it. But they're being really,
conversation, which is appropriate.
And you influence the witness based on information belief, and I'd like to have that all on the record.
All right.
I mean, I don't know why that's so hard to do. If nothing happened bad, that's fine. But you're acting like, tell me who it is and don't talk about the substance. Why can't we have an issue that was outside of presence? It should not have been.
Because you got some information that you shouldn't have gotten.
Right there in division, you're acting like.
Okay, they still arguing.
You say, listen, I need
the
supposedly,
ready.
And you did it.
The state wish to be heard.
Okay, and by the way, it looked like they're buying time. What ends up happening? Brian Steele eventually goes to sit. The state gets to be heard, and then Brian Steele comes back up afterwards, and he literally says, "If I have to go to jail."
You don't have that luxury at this point in time. You don't.
Without the court addressing the issue, we believe the drumming.
Basically, the other guy says, "Yo, we can't do this without." By the way, PT Boy gave me thinking for the 5. It says, "Yo, tell Ak to tell Drill to wear his name tag, bro." What? You want to see Drill?
Sir, you all are really getting yourselves cross purposes at this point in time. Sir, I'm telling you.
Okay, now this is Brian Steele, who takes off his jacket. He's ready to get taken into custody. really defending Jeffrey Williams.
challenge I'm having in this particular circumstance.
It's not
That's not what happened. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. I'm just telling you, that's not what happened.
Judge, respectfully, we are not obligated to simply accept that there's been no violation. We believe that there has been. And the only
Okay, well then you've made your. No, we're not doing that at this point in time. So you'll have a choice to make. All right, take Mr. Steele into custody, please.
Yeah, see? And then now he tap on the shoulder. Let me get the blazer off. And he basically whispers to him, yo, I'm not going to put you in cuffs. That's some professional courtesy. I'm not going to put you in cuffs in the court where there's all these cameras, because that might really fuck up your career. You get what I'm saying? Yo, just walk with me, okay? Walk with me. We're going to go in the back room, okay? Yeah. So he takes off his jacket. And I ain't gonna lie, again, this is only lawyer privilege. He's gonna still have a chance to talk to the judge before he gets escorted out. He puts it there. He's gonna take his tie off.
Your Honor, would the court afford me one moment to confer with counsel regarding the appropriate remedy?
Okay.
Can I say one thing, Your Honor?
And then he says, can I say one thing? And this is where I think Brian Steele secured his spot on Diddy's case, right here. Other than, remember when he said this? Remember when he said this? Every drop of blood, Brian Steele. When he was doing the interview, he said, I'm going to defend this nigga with every drop of blood. Remember this?
Very hard for Mr. Williams. I am not supportive processed
No.
food.
Where is it? He said, yo, right here.
In response to any allegation is Mr. Williams committed no crime whatsoever, and we will fight to my last drop of blood to clear him.
Damn. We'll fight till the last drop of blood. Now you see a lawyer ready to go to jail for you. This Gunner wouldn't even go to jail for Young Thug. Brian Steele was like, all right, take it off. Good. I'm ready to go. Lock me up. Lock me up. Yo, Thug was watching like, damn, this nigga realer than some of these other niggas I be rubbing my nose with. Like, he the real slime. That's really YSL Steele.
Yes, sir. You certainly may.
And he goes up and he says this to the judge.
Mr. Williams does not wish to go forward without me being here. You are removing me against his will, my will. You're taking away his right to counsel. And you're conducting material parts of this trial without me present, and I can't learn about it by watching online. So for that reason, additionally, I asked for a mistrial. And I assume you deny, but I'd like you to deny our motions for mistrial. You denied the other people.
I've denied your motion, but I'll certainly take that under advisement, sir.
Okay, no, so I missed that moment. There was a moment where he literally says, if I have to go to jail, can I spend it? Can I spend it in the same cell? I just want to play that part and we'll get back to the Diddy trial. Cell, Brian Steele. Yeah, he wanted to spend. He said, if you're going to lock me up, man, here we go.
Not that bad at evidence. And nobody.
No, this ain't it. Here we go.
Whatever reason that doesn't take, and you don't give a bond, then I'd ask that I can be with Mr. Williams and we work on our case all weekend, for all those weekends. Otherwise, I can't prepare.
He said, lock me up with Jeffrey. God damn it.
I speak with Mr. Williams all the time.
That's up to you, and sir. I will, sir. If that comes to pass, you have my support. I will.
Because he was held in contempt and sentenced to 20 days in jail, which was supposed to be on the weekends because he works weekdays as obviously a lawyer. And he's like, well, if you're going to sentence me to spend jail time on the weekends, can I be locked up in the same jail as Young Thug? Because we got to work on this case. That's a thug, bro.
I'm going to file a notice of appeal, but for whatever reason that doesn't take, and you don't give a bond, then I'd ask that I can be with Mr. Williams and we work on our case all weekend, for all those weekends. Otherwise, I can't prepare. I speak with Mr. Williams all the time.
That's up to you, and sir. I will, sir. If that.
Anyway, all right, let's get back to it, chat. Cool. So now, Brian Steele, we just gave you the little rundowns. Brian Steele is saying, hey, so you mentioned that you got off the elevator at 11:14 or 11:15. You described Mr. Combs as having a devilish expression on his face. Flores says, well, that's my opinion. Well, Steele says, well, when you get off the elevator, what's in your hand? Flores says, my radio. Ooh, okay. Let's see. Then it says, wait, did Mr. Combs didn't attack you, did he? Flores says no. He says, and then was there any law enforcement involvement? Flores says no. He says, you videoed for your wife and kept it, right? He says, I did. So, but there was never law enforcement called. He said there were not. So you told the jury Mr. Combs said to Cassie, you're not leaving, but your report did not say that, right? He says, at that point, I didn't believe it was a significant fact. I'm not going to put down the back and forth. So Brian Steele's bringing up a point. You claim that Diddy told Cassie he couldn't leave, which, by the way, would be technically kidnapping. But you never put it in your report. He said, I wasn't going to put down every detail. So he says, so it wasn't important 9 years ago, but only now it's important, huh? It's Brian Steele, brother. AUSA says, objection. Judge says overruled. Flores says, I didn't put it in the report at the time. So Steele says, you said you were offered a bribe, but hadn't you told him he had to pay for the vase? Flores says yes. Steele says, the gentleman you say you saw in the room you described to the jury is not in your report. He says, well, he didn't engage. Why didn't you ask him his name? So, well, he wasn't talking to no one. Steele says, did you tell anyone at the time that you saw a man? Because remember, this guy who's a black guy in the room was supposed to be the sex worker that was fucking Cassie. Because remember, the government is saying that was a ongoing freak off that Cassie was trying to escape from. Diddy beat her ass and dragged her back to it. The guy is saying, I'm security. I went up there. I went to the room to be like, yo, bro, y'all can't be doing this. I saw a guy who was a black male in there too. So Steele is saying, why you didn't ask him what his name was? Why? He says, oh, he didn't say nothing to me. He says he wasn't talking to no one. So Steele says, did you tell anyone at the time? Flores says, no. Steele says, and the 7-foot driver, do you know who it was? Flores says, I don't know, but Cassie knew him. Steele says, you didn't put in your report that you offered to call law enforcement, but she refused. Why not? Flores says, she said no. So there was no reason to include it. So that's another point of apparently law enforcement, they're trying to say, oh, we would have involved the cops, but Cassie didn't want us to do it. Steele is saying it's not in the report. This is why this report and the exhibit is so important. Steele says, you said you put Mr. Combs against the wall. That's aggressive, isn't it? Flores says, it could be, but I only put my forearm against his chest. Steele says, but you didn't put that in your report either. The guy says, you're asking me to have put more detail in my report. Steele says, do you remember the layout? Guy says, no, but it was just a corner room. Steele says, was it a normal hotel room like I was staying, like just one room, or did it have a living room? Guy says, I don't know. Yo, Steele is doing a good job. But I'm probably slopping him off. Pause. The reason why, like, he's showing that this guy's memory ain't all the way there. So when he says shit outside of this report, at least the report he wrote that day, 9 years later, his story is all over the place. He's showing the jury, this nigga is all over the fucking place. So he's saying, do you remember what type of room it is? Can't remember. He says, remember it's a corner room. Well, was there one room? Was there a living room? So I don't remember. He says, well, the third party, you said he was on the bed, right? So he's trying to catch this guy in a lie. He says, it was a pullout. Yeah, Brian Steele's trying to catch this nigga in a lie. Yo, I said pause, gang. I said pause. Okay. Now, Steele is a really good lawyer to catch people in lies, kind of show like their memory might be fuzzy. Then he says, Steele says, you were in the hospitality business as well as security, right? Dude says yes. Steele then says, Mr. Combs, it was clear to you that he wanted to pay for the damage, right? AUSA says, objection, speculation. The judge says, basically almost saying sustained, but he's saying to the Brian Steele, asking a different way. Mr. Steele says, well, I guess it could be embarrassing for a guest. Objection. And the judge now sustains that, right? Which means when you sustain the objection, it means, yo, stop asking that. Steele says, one moment, nothing further. The judge says redirect, so now the prosecutor gets to come back, clean up whatever. AUSA says, did you typically include every single detail in a report? So now they're responding to how Mr. Steele just exposed this guy, that he's saying a lot of really important shit, but it was never in the report. Like, for example, if you're saying that she told you not to call the cops, why didn't you put that in the report? If you're saying you and him had a physical altercation where you put your hand against his chest and pressed him against the wall, why is that not in the report? If you say you saw a man in the room, why is that not in the report? Everything else is in the report. So that's Brian Steele's angle to show that this report is full of shit. And this report that this nigga is now trying to say, oh yeah, because the state, or not state, but the feds are trying to say, well, it kind of looked like it was a freak off going on there because there was a nigga in the room. They had to check Diddy, all that type of stuff. And the only reason why we never got the cops involved is because, Cassie said no, and obviously she a victim. She might have been scared of him, blah, 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 blah. Diddy's lawyer, Brian Steele, is saying it's not in the report, though. Why none of that? Why none of the important information 9 years later ain't in the fucking report? Okay? I think it's a good tactic. He said, did you include every single detail in the report? So the AUSA is trying to answer to that now. Flores says no. Says, did he seem drunk or high? Flores says no. That's very important too. Because there, even some people incorrectly reported that Diddy was trying to plead insanity. No, he wasn't. He was saying that there were some of his outbursts was due to some of the mental state or drug-induced states he was in, not saying it alleviated or relieved any responsibility for a crime he may have committed. They're saying if you see him like act out, it might have been because he was drunk or high. The AUSA is saying, was he drunk or high? They're saying, no, he wasn't. So they're trying to establish this pattern that it's not because he was under some, drug-induced state. This guy's just violent. This guy is a monster, right? So Flores says, no. Okay. We cooking, chat. We cooking. We just waiting for some more. Okay, bet. Here we go. AUSA says, when he offered you money, what did he say? Flores says, he said he ain't want nobody to know about it, pretty much. And AUSA says, which way was he dragging Cassie? And Flores says, back to the room, which is the point of that what they wanted to get out anyway. This is nothing further. So now we're going to get on to the second witness. Holy. All right, so the first witness is a security guard. It looks like fully that video of Cassie getting beat on in the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016 is at play. Cassie Diddy Intercontinental. That's at play, okay? So this is the video.
New surveillance footage obtained exclusively by CNN appears to corroborate some of the allegations of abuse against music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The video, captured on multiple cameras, shows Combs assaulting his then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura in a hallway at a Los Angeles hotel in March 2016. A lawsuit filed by Ventura in November last year and settled the next day referenced actions that seem to match those seen in this video. There is no audio. According to the complaint, Combs became extremely intoxicated and punched Miss Ventura in the face, giving her a black eye, which according to the lawsuit prompted Ventura to try and leave the hotel room. The surveillance video obtained by CNN begins as she enters the hallway. The complaint says as she exited, Mr. Combs awoke and began screaming at Miss Ventura. He followed her into the hallway of the hotel while yelling at her. The complaint goes on to say he grabbed her and then took glass vases in the hallway and threw them at her. In the surveillance video, Combs can be seen grabbing Ventura and throwing her to the ground. As Ventura lies on the ground, Combs then kicks her twice and attempts to drag her on the floor back to the hotel room. Ventura is seen picking up a hotel phone. Combs seems to walk back to the hotel room, then returns and appears to shove her in a corner. Moments later, he can be seen throwing an object in her direction. According to Ventura's now settled lawsuit, the pair began dating several years after they met in 2005. They parted ways in 2019. Combs' attorney said the decision to settle was in no way an admission of wrongdoing. Ventura declined to comment on the video, but her attorney...
Okay, so they're starting out very hot and heavy. That video, which I think is pretty much safe to say, the publication of that video to CNN, it felt like it was a part of a pretrial strategy for the prosecutors to really influence people that may have been saying, hey, well, like, how do we know he was really doing these things? They can't leak the freak off videos, right? We saw them talk about like some things like baby oil, which was like, whoa, baby oil, that's some freaky ass nigga shit. But they needed a little bit more to convince a lot of people and possibly even taint the jury pool. And it looks like that video did do it. And not only was it something to be mentioned to kind of shift public narrative, that is what the first focus is. It's around, remember, the first person is a guy who I think he now works for law enforcement, but he was a security back then in 2016 for the Intercontinental Hotel. He responded to the situation with Diddy and Cassie, and he claimed that he got physical with Diddy after he also stepped in and said, if she wants to leave, she could fucking leave. She leaves. Supposedly they ask her, hey, do you want to press charges or should we call the cops? She says, no, I'm good. Let me get out of here. She leaves with the nigga that's a 7-foot driver. Then they go back to the room to Diddy to check that nigga like, yo, bro, you can't be doing all this here, bro. Like, you're tripping out, man. You got to get out of this. Like, stay in your room or whatever. They say they claim they see another man who was, like, sitting on the bed, who's a black guy. We don't know if it means dark skin, but a guy of African American descent. And apparently Diddy kind of is like, wait, are you recording me? Because I guess he saw a phone in their hand. It's like, wait, you recording me? And then the guy yokes him up or pushes him to the wall like, nigga, what the fuck is up with you, bro? And essentially then reminds him of the rule. Looked like Diddy clearly calms down. And Diddy had offered him money. He said he turned it down. Looked like it was maybe another employee who took the money to like delete it, because the dude said after, he said he did record it with his phone, but he said 2 days later he had 2 days off, and when he came back he couldn't find the footage. So it looks like somebody else took the bread, right? Holy. All right, people. All right. We getting there. We are getting there, man. This is the real day one. Let's see if we can find this. Okay, by the way, let me watch his vlog about what was going on. Here we go.
All right, here we are, Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press.
By the way, he's a person of Sweden.
We're here at the break after the opening statements in U.S. versus Sean Combs. It was quite a process. Number one, there was the jury selection, and we'd been covering it last week, and we did sort of an extra you can find on Substack and extra subscribers about a juror that probably should have been stricken for cause. It's a UN staffer that basically works at the counterterrorism office, and that would work with U.S. law enforcement, which he then denied. In any event, the opening statements were quite something. It turns out it's a more stripped-down case, at least than I thought. The U.S. attorney Johnson talked about Cassie and Jane, which is a pseudonym, and also a Mia and arson. Now, Tenny Garagos, in her opening statement, said, this is just about private sexual behavior. They don't dispute that Combs can be violent and jealous, but that should never have been a federal case, and that the witnesses are all have their own interests, including filthy lucre, money. So we're going to see how it plays out. Right at the end, after the jury left, Brian Steele, they brought up from Georgia after the Young Thug trial, made some evidentiary objections about the reports about the hotel, Intercontinental Hotel lobby, elevator lobby violence. So that should be resolved.
Now, the case might be structured in many different ways, right? Remember, this is a big case. They know what's going to happen. Brian Steele his only job might be deal with this footage. Like, Steele, your job is to make this footage look not that important. And maybe we see Mark Agnifilo, or Agnifilo, however you say his name. I know I'm fucking his name up a bunch. Maybe his job will be, because what the next case, the next phase is going to be, who is going to, and this is the heavy lifting of the whole trial, if you ask me. Who is going to be the attorney to cross-examine Cassie? Supposedly Cassie is supposed to take the stand at some point this week, but we're going to probably see escorts. We're going to see all type of people, hotel staff, security, former personal assistants. They're going to take the stand, I would imagine, first. When Cassie gets on that bitch, that's going to be time. It's going to probably be, she's going to be on the stand for at least 2 days, I would imagine. She's the star key witness. Without her, this case is flimsy. So whoever the attorney for Diddy that's going to be combing through everything she says, again, cross is going to be brutal. I would imagine the AUSAs have prepared her for this. I would imagine that her current husband is probably there supporting her. Remember, she is pregnant. It's going to be brutal. They have to chop her down. They have to remind the jury and the audience and everybody who is witnessing this case, Cassie might be this demure young woman now who is having a child and is happily married, but back then she was a freak. That was a nympho that couldn't get enough of penis. And that's how Diddy's going to put it across. And she liked to do freaky shit like how he liked to do freaky shit. And they were in it together. We're going to see how that plays. I'm wondering if Tenny is going to do that part, or maybe it's Mark. Or maybe they leave everything to Brian Steele. I don't think they'll leave everything to Brian Steele, but Brian Steele, he got up first, and he's doing his thing to try to get this idea about the first part of the state's case is to show, hey, this is what happens when you defy Sean Combs. You leave a freak off. He drags you back, he beats your ass, and forces you to fuck other people. Brian Steele is trying to show, no, you guys are spinning this into something that it's not. How do we know there's a freak off going on? Oh, the guy says, well, the prosecutor put the person on the stand and said, there's a guy in the room. How come we ain't hear nothing about this guy in any reports other than you saying it now? So that's where we're at with it.
Resolved this afternoon as the witnesses began, including with some hotel witnesses. So Inner City Press, we're on the case. We're covering other cases too. I just stopped at the Mag Court. A man was released after 2 uses of a gun. Well, one brandishing and one using. Ordered released, but there's been a request by the government for a stay, which was denied, but they're going to be appealing it. So we're going to be covering that as well. But Diddy it is. In for a pound, in for a penny, in for a pound. Inner City Press on the case.
Interesting. We're still monitoring the Tory situation. It's still a top story. The Tory situation, according to his team, he's in critical condition. We're going to see. Okay? We'll also find out some other details. Apparently, Diddy had a Bible on the trial desk, or the desk he's sitting with his attorneys. Said Diddy looked like he's leaning on faith as he goes through federal trial for sex trafficking, because he was reading from the Holy Bible in court. The Bad Boys founder had a Bible at his table on Monday and was reading scriptures before opening statements from the prosecution and the defense team, according to folks in a courtroom. They said that he had a lot of family supporting him, and including a bunch of his kids at the Combs, and the Combs family looked stoic as federal prosecutors laid out their case against him, with the fam showing no emotions whatsoever. Wearing a sweater over a collared shirt, Diddy hardly moved as the prosecution addressed the jury. He fidgeted his feet a bit and had a blank stare. One of Diddy's defense lawyers, Tenny Garagos, handling open statements, and a couple of jurors appeared to nod off, resting their heads in their hands. Garagos was speaking right before lunch. Seemed like jurors were getting tired and hungry. Still, a couple of jurors were taking a ton of notes during Tenny's opening. Her father and famed defense attorney, Mark Garagos, looked like a proud father. So her father's there, as he watched her do her thing. This is Tenny Garagos here. Tenny's husband was also in court. They kissed in a cafeteria during a lunch break after the opening statement, with Tenny ordering, goddamn, they know every fucking thing, egg salad. Why we need to know what his lawyers are eating? Sparkling water and salt and pepper chips. Cassie's name came up in a bunch of openings, and her defense attorney, Douglas Wigder, yeah, remember, I knew it was Douglas, yeah, Douglas Wigder, huddled with her husband, Alex Fine, in the cafeteria. So it appears, we don't know if Cassie was there, but Cassie is there. Cassie's husband, which is this guy, Alex Fine, is there. Alex wore sunglasses, just like he was outside on his way to the court when he had no mood to talk to our photographer. Diddy's mom, Janice, was also wearing sunglasses. The lunch break is about to end. So let's look at the video of Cassie's man showing up to court. We don't know if Cassie's there as of yet, but he looked like he's going to stay through the whole thing. Keep in mind,
Mormon culture,
this guy has a history with Diddy. Don't know if he ever got violent, physical, or did they shout or cuss each other out. But apparently, Alex Fine was hired by Diddy as Cassie's personal trainer, and it's now resulted in this, where he's now married her and has multiple kids with her, and she's turned around suing him, and he's supporting her. So let's see him walking into court. He's going to be supporting his wife, Cassie. Here we go. If it'll load. Okay, here we go, chat.
Fine, Alex? Alex Fine? Is that you?
Are you here supporting Cassie? You look fantastic.
I wonder how big the courtroom is. There's so many people there. Okay. So that's Alex Fine showing up. And then here is now Diddy's mom, Janice Combs, showing up along with, I think these are the twins. I think we see Justin here. This is Quincy here. And I think this is King, a.k.a. Christian Combs here. So this is the full family. Look like they walk in. If you can't tell, there's barricades right here. You see police right there. Clearly, they've allowed and they're keeping the public back. This is one of those spectacles. I don't know if you ever seen the outside the courtroom for when Michael Jackson had trial. Obviously, I think Michael Jackson's he's the biggest, right? Michael Jackson trial outside. Yeah, Michael Jackson outside court. It was crazy. Look, him leaving court. Look. Okay, I was trying to see. There were people chanting. It was madness. It was madness. These are pictures he took outside court. People were crying. There was so much going. This is him arriving to court. Okay, we can't really see. Oh, he was showing up to court in handcuffs? What the fuck? Oh, wow. Look, yeah, okay, here we go. Fanfare was ridiculous. Now, I don't think it's going to be like that for Diddy. I don't think people like Diddy like how they love Mike. They love Mike. They love them some Mike. So they're chanting he's innocent. He hops out. Walked in pretty... Yeah, Michael was he really turned from black to white. This shit crazy. Mike walked in pretty confident. He waves. You see all the sheriffs. Okay.
Mr. Jackson has been repeatedly... The charges.
You see the fanfare that's going on with him, and I would have guessed the same thing is going to go on with Diddy. Let's see how it looks with his family showing up to court. By the way, remember Diddy. You see Diddy, Diddy's not going to be walking into court because he will be brought there by sheriffs, or not necessarily sheriffs, I believe U.S. Marshals. They're going to be bringing him back and forth from the federal holding facility in MDC to court. So they're going to go on the ground, I believe. So you won't see him entering or exiting court. And you won't see how people react to Diddy, but you're going to see all these cameras. You're going to see Diddy's family on the walk up because they walk in through the front of the court. Here we go. Feels like more press than fans, right? Feels like a lot more press than fans. With Michael Jackson was a lot of fans. But, of course, keep in mind, they're not going to see Diddy. So it's like it makes sense it's more press than fans because the fans wouldn't be fans of the family. They're fans of Diddy, if they're any fans, right? Okay, so we see Quincy. Who's this? I think this is one of the daughters. Then we got the two twins. We see Christian here. We see, not Christian, I mean Quincy. Then we see Christian here. Is this Janice? The sisters holding hand in solidarity. We see, he got to be a bodyguard. This nigga look too buff. He look like Shannon Sharp, man. Except there ain't no 20-year-old white woman around. This nigga look like Shannon Sharp. It's like a Shannon outfit, too. Yeah, they're all holding hands. I think this is I think this is Christian. I think these are the twins. Is this Janice? I can't tell. All right. Look like this is a special entrance, by the way, not the regular entrance.
How are you feeling this morning, Mr. Geragos? Are you ready for today?
Mr. Geragos, anything you have to say as we head into a jury selection and the opening statements?
Have you spoken to Diddy? How's he doing? How's he feeling?
Good morning. Anything to say before
Oh,
going
let's
into
see the fit. What are you wearing today? You look fantastic. We love the suit.
This is Tenny Garagos, I believe.
Good morning. Anything to say before
Oh,
going
let's
into
see the fit. What are you wearing today? You look fantastic. We love the suit. Today's the day.
Mr. Big Brian Steele.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, guys. Guys, be careful.
Have you spoken
Do you have a
to
second for a question?
Have you spoken to Sean Combs? Like, how's he doing? How's he feeling? Does he feel positive today? I know he was nervous last week.
His publicist said that he was upbeat this morning.
Can you confirm that?
I can't talk about the case at all, so I don't want to violate the court's order.
Yeah, there are strict protective orders in federal cases, and you're doing what you got to do.
Well, how was your weekend? What did you do over the weekend? Was it strictly planning, or did you relax, or did you have a drink?
Thinking about you guys.
Okay, Agnophilia breaks through. Like he got his little bag with him. Right here. And that's really what it is. Okay, bet. Let's get back to this. We should have some more updates. I apologize. I know, again, remember, we are waiting for updates here from Inner City Press. Inner City Press, we appreciate you, brother. We appreciate you. I would love to get Inner City Press like to come on here like after the trials, or not after the day's done, and to kind of, give us like, because he's pretty impartial. Like, I don't think he gives a fuck if these guys are innocent or guilty. He just says what it is, and I really like him. Okay, anyway. Look like the male dancer has been called. Ooh, here we go. Y'all ready, chat? Y'all ready? So this is the second witnesses right here. So it's a pullout. It's asking a different way. Drunk or high, blah, blah, nothing further. Judge says a recross. Steele says the motion-sensitive cameras, there are gaps, right? So essentially they're saying that the surveillance footage doesn't have all nonstop footage. It only shows motion, and Flores says yes. So there's times you can't look at because there's supposedly no motion. Steele says nothing further. The judge says next witness, AUSA Comey says, what did Miss Ventura pay you for? The witness says to have sex with her. So now this clearly is a sex worker. Sean Combs is there too. The witness says, my boss called me and told me he couldn't find any of our black dancers. So could I go to a bachelorette party in the Gramercy Park Hotel? Ain't that where my show at? My show's at Gramercy Theater. Is there a hotel there? Oh, hell no. Don't tell me we having the chat nigga birthday party where the freak offs is at. Holy. Gramercy Theater. Where is it? Gramercy Green. Where's the Gramercy Hotel in? I never heard of this place. The Gramercy what? Park Hotel. Let's look that up. Gramercy Park Hotel. Oh, it's a block away. So Gramercy Theater. Oh, chat. It's going to be historic. So chat, if you don't know, we're having a show in 3 days. We're right here, Gramercy Theater. That's where we're having a show. We're 2 blocks from the freak off. Holy. Chat, y'all might as well bring y'all baby. No, let me stop playing. Yo, chat. I've been trying to, for some of our regulars and, I'm trying to book an after party spot. The after party to the Gramercy Theater show. This joint right here. We got to go to the hotel. Bring it. You got a BYOB. Literally. Bring your own baby oil. Real talk. Now, that's all jokes before somebody takes me out of context. Anyway, all right, cool. So it says, my boss called me and said he couldn't find her black dancers. So could I go to a bachelorette party in Gramercy Park Hotel in downtown Manhattan? He says, so what did you expect to do? It's like a little stripper dance. It says she was in the hotel room in a red wig and stockings and sunglasses. She gave me a few $100s. It says, what was the room like? Red couches, Astroglide, which is a lubricant. Okay, so we now figured out that we ain't hear about baby oil as lubricant yet. Astroglide is actually a lubricant type. Astroglide. I want to show y'all exactly what this motherfucker is. Hopefully I go to images, might not show. Okay. So this is Astroglide. This is lubricant. So this is like official lubricant shit. You can find it at CVS. So there was a man on the right side of the room. He says the man had on a white robe and a bandana over his face. And a bandana. So it's like Diddy was wearing a shiesty kind of below his eyes. So he had the bandana down here, and then he had a baseball cap, so you could only see like this. You could only see like this. Okay? From his voice, I recognize him as Sean Combs. The person said, well, what did he say? He says, he said he was into importing and exporting. The male dancer then says, he says he was having problems with my boss. The defense says, objection. Comey says, I'll get back into that. But after the sex was over, what happened? The male dancer says, Cassie gave me a couple $1,000 more. Whoa. So they started with, she gave me a few $100s, right? She gave me a few $100s. Now it turns, Cassie gave me a few $1,000 more. Wow. The male dancer says, he said to give them my number. I did. Cassie called me and asked me for a photo. The Comey says, then what? Says she called me to go back. I did for a few hours. And then a few times after that. So was Combs always present? Yes. Comey says, any other locations? He said, yeah, the Essex house. His residence on 56th Street. I believe 210. So 210 56th Street. Let's look at where Diddy was living. 210 56th Street, New York. Let's figure out. What is this? 210. It says a sushi spot. These are probably big ass buildings that probably have like rooms and hotels up above. They're trying to figure out where. 210 West 56. I don't know. Don't ask me why I'm so nosy. I'm trying to figure out what every nigga was doing. Okay, whatever. 210 at the time. And her residence on the West End Ave. I think number 10. AUSA says, what name were you to say when you were there to see? Black. So I guess the name they would say is Black. Male dancer says, I would send her vulgar text messages. AUSA says, like what? The dancer says, you want me to say it? The prosecutor says, give an example. Male dancer says, I'll text her like, y'all want to fuck you right now. AUSA says, well, how often did you use baby oil? The male dancer says, every time. Oh, shit. Now the baby oil comes in. So apparently every time. The male dancer says, Sean Combs said we didn't have enough baby oil on. He'd say, y'all slow down, separate. Hold on, man. Too much fucking friction going on in here. Slow down, separate. Douse yourself in baby oil. He said one time he tried to have us role play like we had just met at the airport. We weren't good, so we skipped that. What direction did Combs give you? Male dancer says he'll tell me to step off and back off. Comey then says, how many times, if any, were you told to urinate on Ms. Ventura? The defense says, now we get to hear another lawyer, Xavier Donaldson. I think he comes from the appellate team as well. Xavier Donaldson, Diddy. I think he's on the appellate team. Xavier Donaldson is a New York-based attorney. He filed a motion for appearance saying he will be joining the team. He's had his own legal practice in 2023 and been previously spent 24 years at a New York City law firm. He received his law degree at Howard, where Combs actually went, and actually got an honorary degree and also donated $1 million, if you guys don't know. He be joined this legal team. It's not uncommon to add lawyers, blah, 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 blah. He has unlimited money and whatever. Okay, so let's look up his name real quick to see why he would be added. Obviously, we get it. He's a black dude that comes from the same college that Diddy went to, Howard. But what else? He's a crisis manager. He's a litigator. Okay. Trying to figure out why. In 2000 to 2004, he represented clients charged with complex federal and state cases, including murder, international, blah, 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 bank fraud, complex, Okay. Huh. Look like he's also familiar with, appellate stuff, okay? But he's been involved in civil litigations, okay? All right, so now we see federal and civil litigations. He's involved there. Okay. All right. All right. He's also a lawyer. No, not a lawyer. He's a adjunct. I don't know how to ever say this word. It's like me, part-time professor, okay? Or was. Okay. By the way, he went to college in Howard School of Law in 1991. When did Diddy graduate? When did Diddy graduate Howard? Diddy graduated Howard. He attended from 1987 to 89. This guy went to law school 1991 to 94. His previous school was St. Augustine. So maybe they could have known each other at Howard. We don't know. Okay. All right. Interesting to know. So the defense said objection. The judge said overruled. By the way, again, this is outside the courtroom. The baby oil has finally made the appearance. Oh, my God. All right. Oh, my God. The male dancer says, they told me not to do it all at once. The defense says objection to him saying they. The judge says, I've got it.
So Diddy's case or trial has finally started. They're picking out the jurors and stuff. Do you guys feel like Diddy will be freed, or you feel me, he's cooked? I've been reading a lot of comments. A lot of people have been saying that Diddy's cooked. You feel me? I don't even know how I necessarily feel about Diddy. Because like at first everyone wanted him locked up. Then it's like people kind of feel bad for him now. Because I'm not gonna lie, the stuff he did to Cassie is 100% wrong. What he did to Cassie is 1,000% wrong, and people would never agree with it. But like, if you want to call it for what it is, Diddy was a freak. Okay, if people underage are involved, lock him up, throw him under the jail. But if people underage aren't involved, bro, Diddy is a freak, bro. Like his lawyer said, he's a swinger, bro. Like you feel me? He might want to watch his wife get piped out. He might, you don't know what did he want to watch. He wants to watch everything. He's a freaky man. He's a freak. That's why they're called freak offs. Get all the freaks together. What do you think's gonna happen? Baby oil with stuff in it that when it goes into your skin, you're paralyzed. Like, yes, that's what happens at the freak off. There's obviously two parties to a Diddy party. There's the party, and then there's the party. Have you ever been invited to the party before? Probably not. But hey, man, let me know how you guys feel about Diddy. Do you want him locked up or do you want him free? Do you feel bad for Diddy? Even if Diddy gets freed, I think his career is done. No one's ever gonna work with him again. No brand's gonna work with him. You feel me? He's still gonna make money off. He probably has real estate like tenants and stuff, and probably like investments that we don't know about. So it's probably still gonna make money, but he's not gonna be making the same money as before. Like he's probably definitely at a billionaire status now. But hey, man, it's your boy Big X News. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'm out.